watching UATV. My name is Tamara Rosevan. We'll be speaking to Rebecca Harms. She's a German politician and a member of the European Parliament. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So the European Parliament approved for Ukraine to receive for visa liberalization for Ukrainians. This means that Ukrainians will be able to travel within the Schengen zone without a visa, but with a passport. Now, this isn't the last, obviously, hurdle. There's still a few things that Ukraine has to do before actually getting the visa-free regime and being able to travel. But this is a landmark step. Ukrainians see this as being finally accepted into the European Union family. Would you say that this is just as significant for the EU?
I think for us, already citizens of the European Union, it was really also high time, overdue, you can say, to give this signal to the Ukrainians that yes, Ukrainians, you are with us and we are with you. I was fighting for this since a very long time, and for me it was a very good day yesterday when I saw the results of the vote.
And how do you see this developing further? Ukraine will achieve the next step and will get further on. But what's next after visa liberalization? How will the European Union show that Ukraine is part of the family?
So I hope that from June on, Ukrainians will be able to travel without complication and without paying to the European Union. I really hope that also these people-to-people contacts will help us to strengthen our relationship. In addition, I think the European Union, not only what we are doing in Brussels, but also the national governments, they have to take more care about developments in Ukraine. For me, there are two priorities. First priority is we have to do more to stop the shelling and the fighting and the killing in east of Ukraine. This ongoing occupation and ongoing fighting against Ukraine must end, and we must put much more efforts on not general implementing of Minsk agreement, but to stop the killing in east of Ukraine must become a priority, and not directly connected to it, but also as an answer to the aggression by Mr. Putin and the Kremlin. The reform process in Ukraine must continue. It's very good that Ukraine complied with all the requirements for visa liberalization, but the fight against corruption, for example, to establish credible institutions, public institutions in Ukraine, to establish also trust in between citizens and the elected political elites. This, I think, needs also efforts from our side.
And this has to come to some sort of understanding between the people and the government. There must be trust, and this is a key thing that has to be there.
So for me, it's so clear that the elected members of the Rada and also the elected responsible people in the government and in the president himself, they are the ones to decide on reforms of the institutions. Institutions matter a lot in the democratic state, and trust in independence of institutions and also that they are able to resist corruption, those institutions, is the fundament for trust of people, of citizens. On the other hand, I know it will take a certain time until we achieve it, but I think for Ukraine this is what Euromaidan revolution of dignity was about.
And it's something that some people are still fighting for these new reformers within the government. They want to see a new type of government in charge, and these different parliamentarians and so on. As I understand, you've visited Ukraine's front line, and you visited with other members of the Ukrainian government. And can you tell us what was your impression?
So I found it each time when I went there, I found it awful. I found it terrifying, and so I visit again and again the front line. Because I do not want to forget how awful it is for the people to resist against the aggression by Russia. I'm very much impressed again and again by the young soldiers who take the burden to defend their country. And I think also for them, so a true engagement in the reform process of Ukraine is very important, because we will win the ideas and the goals of revolution of dignity not only by defending Ukrainian territory. It's very important what the soldiers are doing. Yeah, it's very, very important. They do it also for Europe. But we win the goals, the targets of the revolution of dignity also by doing the reforms to a democratic state and establishment of rule of law.
And so change has to come from within Ukraine as well.
It definitely has to come from Ukrainians. So democratic system can only be established by people in the country. But the friends from Europe and United States, they can give a helping hand on this. So I have a lot of experiences in the transformation, for example, in Poland or in other countries from the Warsaw Pact after they joined the European Union, and also before. Yeah? So when there was this transfer period, I follow the reform process in Moldova. It's not really successful right now. I follow the process in Georgia. It's complicated. And to have friends to also sometimes say a word of critique, like we do it right now on the e-declaration law.
That's right. That's something that the Ukrainian government has been criticized for.
Yeah. So I think so. The law on e-declaration, the question of the audit of NABU, National Anti-Corruption Bureau, and also the pending question of anti-corruption courts. Those issues are interlinked, and they need better answers.
And they need better resolutions. Now, some other aspects of Ukraine's fight against Russia's hybrid war has been Moscow's constant disinformation campaign within Europe itself. Now, what can you tell us about the European Parliament's concrete, solid kind of things that have been done to stop this disinformation campaign, and what needs to be done in the future?
So over the last 2-3 years, the Europeans, especially in the West, they had to learn new lessons because they had never understood the way like Russia is campaigning against the European Union and its credibility. They had never expected to be in the focus of a fake news campaign. More and more they understand, especially since we discussed the interventions in the electoral campaign in the United States by Russia.
And that's something that's Germany afraid of as well.
So Germany, France, we saw already awful interventions against Macron, very, very personal interventions. So they blamed him for crazy things. But so now Europeans have learned some lessons, and now the reactions are much better than 3 years ago. But for Ukraine, for example, this was quite a burden because many citizens were not prepared to the fake news campaign by Russia. And for a certain period, a lot of uncertainty was created in Germany, in France, in UK about what's going on in Ukraine. Meanwhile, we are better prepared. But also with the help from Ukraine. For example, Stop Fake was created by Ukrainians, and Stop Fake is now teaching lessons to organizations in the west of the European Union.
There's been a lot of said how different missions have been coming to Ukraine, including different military experts who've come to teach Ukrainian soldiers, for example, but they've learned along the way from them. So there's a type of exchange between the Ukrainian side and different countries sending their missions and organizations to help Ukraine. So there's been a lot of exchange of information, exchange of knowledge, especially since Ukraine has first-hand experience of what it's like to be at the forefront of Russia's hybrid war. So that's quite important, isn't it?
It is. So it's also still so quite an experience, I think, for people who come from the West and who go to east of Ukraine to see how much this war has worsened an anyway awful situation. The way soldiers have to get organized on this terrible front line. I think most of soldiers in Western European armies cannot figure out what it means nowadays to take the battle against Mr. Putin and his mercenaries. Nobody can figure out what it means for civilians to survive in these gray zones along the contact line. And so understanding this, I think, is very important, and all news which we can bring to the West from east of Ukraine really will matter for our common future and for bringing us closer together.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been Rebecca Harms. She's a German politician and an MEP. You're watching UATV.